Writing is about the process. It's about listening and recognizing remnants of your story in the stories of others. When we share our stories with each other, we share the resonance of the human experience. The By Firelight podcast is your invitation to join our circle, a circle of writers, poets, seekers, and storytellers as we capture our living in words. This multifaceted living with joy, grief, love, growth, and loss is shared among us in your legacy, your story. The things you choose to do with your days as they unfold matter here. I'm your host, Betsy Delzer. I'm many things, but in this gathering, I'm a painter, poet, and writer, and I'm honored to be your guide through these episodes. Together, we'll find our muses in the rich and heart-expanding conversations with incredible guests, many who are like minds and all outrageously inspiring hearts. When you press play, you're here in the circle to share this space with us. By Firelight. Today we are hearing from Jen Brady. Jen is a poet who focuses on saving lives as a respiratory therapist in her work life and focuses on all the hope of living in her soul and writing life. She believes that poetry and laughter are necessary to living and plans on doing both until her last exhale and beyond. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, friend. This is so fun.
This is so fun. And it's such an honor to have you on these early days of By Firelight. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course.
So as we begin, I want to imagine inviting your 7 or 77-year-old self to the conversation. What would your younger or older version of yourself want to tell us or want to say?
I love this question. I think that my 7-year-old self and my 77-year-old self would probably tell us similar things. I hope. And I guess what I mean by that is when I remember myself at 7 and what I hope my life will look like when I'm 77 is that there's something about the innocence of childhood. Like, you know where your priorities are as far as laughter and play and friends and like how you want to spend your time is so magical. And I think sometimes as we age, we forget that we used to treasure those things, and we get busy and we get stressed and we have our to-do lists. And as I've gotten older, even now, though I'm decades from 77, I've already felt that pull back to that wonder, like reminding myself to slow down and to savor and to laugh as much as possible and spend time with people who I truly love and who love me. So I guess I'm hoping my 7-year-old and my 77-year-old self will agree on priorities and what brings us joy and how we want to spend our time. So I think it's a wonderful question to think about.
I love that. It almost reminds me of like a bookend of who we really are. And it feels a little bit like in these middle years, right? Like you were saying, like we can get kind of like lost in the swirls that the many times I see people talk about time flying, and I'm like, oh, it is just a figment of our imagination.
Yeah. And, it's almost like you lose the signal, like the signal's there reminding you to slow down and to savor and to truly do things that are life-giving, that make you fall asleep at night exhausted and happy, like you do when you're a kid. But yeah, there's just we lose the signal. That's the best way I can describe it for myself, is that, as I've gotten older, I've like tuned in again to something that's been there all along.
What are some of the practices, or what are some of the things that you do? I know we're here to talk about your writing, which we will get to, but what are some of the things that bring you back online when you think about that signal concept?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely time outside, any time outside, whether it's even like a little bit of a longer walk around my neighborhood, or it's intentional going out to one of my favorite county parks and taking a hike. I mean, I feel like there's something about nature in general, but then sunshine and fresh air and just getting into nature's rhythms versus our kind of human, kind of American rhythms that distract us. So I think those are definitely genuine practices. I think just enjoying other people's writing and poetry and them reminding me through their own words, like what's important. So I would say those are kind of top 2 things that really help ground me and remind me. and laughing as much as possible. Noticing small things, little details.
That's so true of you. So we met several years ago in a noodle shop and made this like natural transition to social media friends. And I remember shortly after connecting with you, reading a piece titled, "I Can't Have a Baby in My Pants." And I found it hilarious. I found it hilarious and so just full of heart. And I was like, this girl that I met in a noodle shop, such an incredible writer. Along with that being a birth story of one of your beloved children, where was that in your evolution as a writer?
I love that that's what connected us initially and just kind of tuned us into the fact that we both really enjoy writing and capturing life through writing too. So it was kind of like almost interestingly that it was I Can't Have My Baby in My Pants about birth story, because in a lot of ways, having my children rebirthed a love for capturing life through words. I think I'd spent a lot of my early years, and when I say early, probably like middle school, like getting into journals with little keys that, of course, is going to keep just anybody out. So, like high tech security. And then I remember very specifically in eighth grade, kind of having like a friend heartbreak and feeling like some distance between me and a good friend, and me being able to like really express how I was feeling in the form of a poem. And I think that's my first memory of writing poetry intentionally. Otherwise, it was just like journaling and that sort of thing. And then maybe kind of kept up with that through high school. I was really into creative writing classes and really enjoyed that format, but not so much poetry. It was just creative writing pieces. And then in my early 20s, there was kind of like busyness and chaos and careers and marriage and children. And then I was just in my very early parenting days when I started trying to capture this like new piece of myself, these new chambers of like my heart that were emerging in my parenting life, and just wanting to savor and remember that. And it also kind of coincided with I was taking more pictures and really getting into photography. So I was like in this dual place of, hey, I'm going to try to capture my life through photos, but then also try to capture it through words, and those two things intermingling. So yeah, I think that particular Can't Have My Baby in My Pants piece was kind of like the beginning. So you caught me right at the rebirth stage.
And just so our listeners know, did you have a baby in your pants?
Well, the reality is that if I didn't have pants on, I would have just had her. So just briefly to talk about it, I was alone in a wheelchair in the middle of a hospital lobby at like 1 a.m. by myself, and my husband was racing to catch up with me. And I could literally feel that this baby would be out of my body if it wasn't for my pants. And so my husband came running around the corner, and I remember like intensely staring at him and be like, take off my pants. And so he did, and she was born.
There you go. So I'm wondering about the sequence a little bit, from kind of this expository writing where you're capturing the life of being a young mom. And then you mentioned the photography and poetry piece. Where did the writing group come into that? Was that a facilitator of some of the work that you began, or how did that kind of connect?
Definitely. And that's why like our spilling writing group and yourself are so essential and vital to that piece of me kind of growing and enjoying that so much, because I'd never, I think, been introduced to the idea of a prompt, like especially since most of my writing life was like journaling or creative writing. So just the idea of like, here's a thought, here's a prompt, here's a sentence, here's a photo, whatever it might be. And like, just try to describe it, or what does that stir up about your own life or something that you want to write about. So the whole idea of prompts was very much like our writing group. You always coming with amazing prompts to kind of like shuffle through and hold and, ponder and seeing where that took me. And then also with photography, like looking at photos that I would take and trying to describe kind of how I felt when I took that photo and what it like my environment was like and what I was thinking about.
Can I ask a formatting question?
Oh yeah.
There's a period of time where you had a lot of poetry just like kind of on a blank space, blank background. And then, am I getting it right that the sequence was a little bit then you started playing with the photography and layering, or was it all the way along kind of happening simultaneously?
I think as far as like a formatting, especially when I felt brave enough to share, right? Because I think I remember I started like my Tumblr account. And then from there, social media kind of like had this like lovely, platform for sharing poetry. And it was great because obviously I enjoyed having my photographs. So I think I went the Tumblr account where I would sometimes just post a picture and then the caption was my poem. And then I tried formatting like the words over the picture,
Mm-hmm.
for more of a fun sharing ability. And then I moved into like kind of just removing the photography and just having the words just for like a new look, and like the distraction of the picture sometimes is too busy or it's hard to format it. So I've like done it all, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in this period of time, then you started to grow quite a following on social media. I would say that noticing how many people share your work like is always so heart expanding. What do you think really led into that place of getting connected to other writing communities outside of our writing group and expanding your platform?
Yeah. It was very organic, I will say. Like mostly I started sharing because of encouragement from others like yourself, like to put it out there. It was a fun way to archive it. I'm not a most organized person in my life. Like I could take you to my house, to my basement, and pull out a couple of Rubbermaid containers of like my scribbled journals and writing from our group and that sort of thing. So I loved being able to archive it that way. That was a big piece of the sharing. And then I think it was you and your prompts kind of introduced some new poets to me that I had never heard of before. And then I remember like liking their formatting, kind of like seeing them online and being like, oh, that's kind of a cool way to do it, and kind of making decisions from there. But I think also because of those poets and the social media piece, there was something called Write Yourself Alive. Do you remember me
Yes.
talking about this?
Yes,
So it was
yes.
like this like online writing group kind of exercise. It was like a program. It was like $35 or something at the time. And then it was just all these people connecting who were writers, and there'd be prompts every day. So something similar to what we did with our writing group, but it was like daily. So I got connected with people all over I think it was mostly the US. There was a few people in North America, but anyway. And so that was awesome. So that was like a continual inspiration to be in even a virtual space with these people who are doing the same prompts as you, but like coming from a completely different place than you were, and just loving. It was just so, I guess, like the heart expanding is a great word that you use, but then it just gave me lots of writing energy. It was just always so inspirational. So I would say those pieces. And then that kind of led to more social media stuff and just connecting with other writers and other people. But it's been over, gosh, 10 years, so it wasn't like some sort of instant kind of connection. It was just kind of grown, just like life should go. It's just slowly growing and connecting with people as you move through it.
So you were in a space where you were archiving online and you're building your platform and your following. And then around that time, if I recall, you printed a few books and then you actually had some merch with some of your work, like cards and magnets. And can you talk a little bit about that decision to try that out and what happened with that?
Yeah. I think I've like been encouraged to do it. And then there were people who were doing it in my writing communities. Like I was seeing people like self-publish or like, put things together. You yourself had done your like spray painted bones book that you had put together for, I think, family for Christmas or something. And so there's like, I was hearing all these little bits of people kind of just dipping their toe into that. And then there was just a lot of companies that was easy to do it with, right? There was lots of like easy uploads online, creating little photo books and that sort of thing. So it just seemed like since I had this archive and everything kind of formatted how I wanted, it was just simply finding a place that could publish it online. And then, yeah, that was fun. There was like, as I'm like on these websites looking at their books and like how to put things together, then I'm like, oh, cool. Like they offer magnets and other things. So I didn't go in with some like, very specific plan, but it just kind of wove its way through to all these different products. And then there's like a couple local places that would carry my poetry in all the different formats. And anyway, it was just really fun how one thing kind of led to the other. But again, it was not something that I had some sort of plan. I just followed what would really bring me joy as far as putting all of that together. So
is that something that you plan on doing again? Do you feel like you're going to publish again?
yeah, I think so. Life has been really full. And the original places that I kind of put this together have either changed how they did it or just kind of price point stuff. So it's just, I need to get back to square one as far as research, but I'd love to. I would love to. I actually just got an email the other day from one of the places used to carry my materials. And they're like, hey, it's been a while. We'd love to have a fresh shipment. So it's been a good, encouraging thing to kind of do that again.
Well, I'm excited to dive into your writing. I'm certainly excited to hear you're interested in publishing again. I love your book so much. One thing I'm wondering is for the listener who has thought forever, and we have some close friends actually who would fall into this category, but who have thought about publishing, who have thought about putting their work together, compiling it, putting it out there. What are one or two tips, one or two pieces of advice that you have for somebody who is in that place and in that space of curiosity?
Yeah, I would say, just simple internet searches, kind of finding the different platforms and how you could upload your work. I think I was lucky because I had it already formatted and easy to kind of upload and, kind of put it in a space that was, I just had like a Google Drive of all my things. So it's just really simple. So if someone hasn't done that part yet, just compiling all of your work and organizing it in a place that you can easily just kind of share it would be definitely a first step. And then the second, just trying to find, a place that would allow you to format it however you would want to. So whether it's like for me, the harder piece was because so much of it was about my photography. So it's harder to find places that will put together photo books with the words and how I kind of wanted it to look. But for someone who maybe just has words on a page, I think there's a lot more options too. So.
All right. Well, how would you describe your writing and how do your ideas come to your pen and page? So just curious about what sparks and then lands, and then what's that process like for you?
I think how I have always, at least in the last 10 years, written has been pretty spontaneously. It usually comes in two different ways. Either I'm overwhelmed with a magical moment. I remember taking my kids out on a snowy afternoon for an adventure and just watching them sprint across this gorgeous, sparkling, snowy field and just being there's just no way to capture this in a photo. I so much want to write this down and how I'm feeling right now. And so sometimes it's just the overwhelm of something magical. And then sometimes it's I'm reading, a book, or I'm just talking to someone and they'll say a line. It can be just, I love how they put it, or it's very evocative. It stirs something up in me. So I have a notes app on my phone and I'll quick, jot it down. And then sometimes when I have a quiet space, I'll kind of just scroll through my prompts and things that have been said or I've read and kind of just spend some time writing about that. Sometimes it comes to nothing. I'll oh, wow, that was a nice little 30 minutes of writing that I don't feel came to much. But then sometimes it's just the right thing that needs to come out of my heart or that I need to express. And so the other part I really love is writing in the group, our writing group. There's been something so unique about the gathering of writing side by side around the same sort of prompts, and then knowing that you will immediately be able to share that fresh ink. That's always my favorite place to write. So if we could do that every other day, that would be awesome.
You are a prolific writer. We make jokes within our group of often some of us will have 1 to 0.5 or something of a piece done by the end of our writing time. And as we're writing simultaneously, sometimes you will have upwards of 7 to 10 pieces or something. So I'm wondering and curious, is it like a flow state that you get into where the words just come and it just feels almost like you've turned on a faucet? Or what is that like for your creative process?
Sometimes, which is great. Like that's my favorite when I just my pen can't keep up or pencil. Because if you've written with me in a writing group situation, I always have to have a pencil because I'm a big like eraser and go back to it. So sometimes, yeah, I'll just kind of like do the flow, but then I go back and I use that same word like 5 times. So I need to find a different word. So there's flow, but then there's like a little bit of edit too. But yes. And I think it's been the discipline, which of writing regularly, just like keeping at it, it just makes it easier. Like if I didn't write as frequently, I think it would be more of a struggle. So I think there's something to that too, just the regular habit and then joy of writing that I think really helps.
I'm curious about if you've had blocks. A lot of times you hear writers talk about blocks or things that come in the way of being able to find blocks. And you've definitely seen me work through some blocks. Usually something I'm going through personally that's kind of created a halt in my ability to like narrate what's happening because it's tricky. But what about you? Have you had seasons where the pencil, I almost said pen again, but where it's just sort of not been able to find the words as easily, or has it kind of always been a steady flow?
No, definitely dry seasons, I think I would call them. My brain's wired really interestingly because I'm someone I think that, I enjoy beauty. I enjoy music and being outside. And there's just visceral, like noticing details of life and, just really soaking it all in. I'm kind of wired that way. That's not something I have to like struggle to make myself do. Like, I think that just comes naturally to me. So I've got like that part of my brain. And then I have like this very technical side of my brain where I really enjoy trying to fix things like MacGyver type stuff. I'm someone who loves to watch a YouTube video and then fix my car. And so that part of my brain definitely was like pulled towards my current profession, which is as a respiratory therapist. A big part of our job is dealing with machines, all of our work, and I had lots of oxygen devices and all the things that we do to support our patients. A lot of them are machines. So I spent a lot of time doing technical stuff and like figuring things out and in that kind of medical space. So during the pandemic, and even when I think I was like in school, because I went back to school much later, I was in my late 30s. So I've been writing in my young family life and capturing all this joy. And at that point, I had my in-home daycare. So I was like surrounded by children for 10 years. So I felt like that was my most magical writing time because I think what I was surrounded by was it just fed it constantly. I actually remember I always had an open notebook on my kitchen counter when I'd have all these like kids in my home because sometimes something they would do would be like just so sweet and inspiring that it would cause me to basically just, I have to write this down and not just like document what they said, but it like caused me to like keep going and like write almost a poem about it. And then, yeah, going back to school and being in any kind of like my chemistry classes and my anatomy classes and just that piece of creative brain and joy and having time to be outside kind of went away. So that felt like a really super dry time for writing. And then when we went through the pandemic as a respiratory therapist, I was like buried and it felt like people dying for months and months. So that was really hard to like find any kind of creative process or like I couldn't even escape into creative writing. Like I just felt physically exhausted, but then so much my brain was like technical machines and patients and all of that. So that's probably my most driest writing time in my life when I was just kind of overwhelmed with kind of the sadder parts of life and technical parts of life, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I know I've said this to you before, but just as you bring that up, it does just touch the nerve of really gratitude you gave so much of your life during the pandemic. And so to you, and I'm sure all of your friends in the medical field who are listening to support you, just thank you for that time and that sacrifice. I know it was above and beyond what we were all kind of carrying in a very tender and sincere way.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So I think we're ready to transition to listening to a few pieces that you brought. You have a few things to share with us, so I'd love to hear.
Okay. Yeah, you'd asked me to find some pieces to bring, and it was kind of hard to choose. So this one, when we talked a lot about when my kids were small and trying to like capture what it felt to be with them, enjoying living. So this one I wrote when we had taken kind of an adventure day trip to Lake Michigan, and they had never seen kind of like an ocean-like environment, water to the horizon and sand for miles. And it was just such a lovely day. So this is what I wrote about it. The shore and water were endless and filled with wind. Their hair revealed the dance that it was, and the air was nearly forced into our lungs with the lake-scented gusts. Their shouts were not words, but sounds of incredibly happy wonder. Their bodies could not stop running because the world felt as big as it really is. Sparks flew from their eyes and ignited their imaginations, and I saw it sink in and stick to them like sand, that adventures together are the bones of life. So this next one I wrote when my daughter was small, probably about 3 years old, and the sun was setting and the light was coming through the living room in this golden glow. And she was just deciding to dance in the middle of our living room. And so this is what I wrote. The light, you exclaim, is full of sparkling tiny planets. You want to catch them like fireflies. Let them land on your fingers like a whisper of unseen galaxies. Your pursuit becomes a dance to music that only you can hear, and you forget that I'm even here. You are unlearned grace in sacred space, moving just because it feels lovely. You take our dusty living room and transform it into a sky swimming with stars. So those are probably like my two favorites as far as like remembering how it felt and then also being able to capture it so well.
I know Jack and Emma, I know your kids, and I know the smaller versions of them. And I remember, so there's that it's playing out as a memory for me of them. But for someone who even doesn't know, but can embody with another child or a memory of someone or something else, I'm wondering, as you read it or you reread it or share it with your kids, does the memory come alive? Do you see it all over again?
100%. Yeah. And I think why it was such a drive to like, because I love to write, and that's something that, comes easily to me and something that's so life-giving, just to be able to not simply take a photo with a camera, but then to just remember how it felt and, just like the sense and like even what their voices sounded like and like how I felt in that moment, just watching this all play out. So absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It comes very viscerally back to my imagination. So
from the listener, it comes viscerally over. So thank you. What's next?
I don't know. What kind of time do we have?
All the time in the world.
All the time. Let me see. Okay. So this one I wrote, it was New Year's, like, it was January 1st or 2nd, and thinking through, never been a big New Year's resolution person, but just thinking through words for the year or like what I hoped for. So this is what I ended up writing. Let this be the year that you shave shame away from your bones and let it fall to decay far behind you. Let this be the year you allow others to tell you a truth that you were not ready to tell yourself. Let this be the year you invite your heart into your eyes and see peace as an armor to guard your spirit. Let this be the year of clarity and joy and full of moments you did not know you needed. And then this one, I think, when we talk about like what's inspiring and the prompts, so to speak, I feel like sometimes when my life was feeling very quiet and I felt like there's a lot of white noise static in my own life and didn't feel very inspired, sometimes people would come along in my life that were friends or acquaintances where their story would impact me really deeply, and they would almost become like a muse. Like, it wasn't my emotions and it wasn't my story, but I felt connected to it enough that I felt like I could like write about it, if that makes sense. So when I wrote this next one, I think there was a lot of people around me going through heartbreak, and that also echoes back to your own life. Even though I wasn't currently experiencing a lot of pain and heartbreak in my own life, you can't help, if you've experienced that at any point, that story feels a little fresher just in your like ache to relate to your friend or this human in front of you who's hurting so badly. You can't help but let that be like bubble to the surface a little bit more. So this is what I wrote. Do not lose your spirit. If your heart has been fractured and torn, broken and crushed, fragmented, bruised, and has burst 1,000 times. For beauty lies in the reshaping, within the patches and the tailored seams, in the mending and the stitches. There's the strength to hold your life. Yeah, I felt like if I was going to do another book, I almost feel like at this point I have enough that I could almost do themes, like kind of like the themes of like ache and heartbreak, and then, one about hope and one about maybe parenting. I don't know. It could happen. I wrote this next one, I think recently, and I think the prompt was when you need the words more than anything. I think this was at like our writing group. And I really loved this one because I felt like, at least in that moment, it was something I was writing it for myself. I wasn't necessarily writing it for someone else. It was writing it for me. So when you need the words more than anything, but life has stolen them from your tongue, and there's not a whisper, not a syllable to be found. When the silence screams and your pulse is an earthquake, and quiet is a 4-letter word in a movie rated M for mature, because there's no way the kids could ever handle this. I hope when you need the words more than anything, that the alphabet in your blood spells them out, sending them to your heart, that the stars consult poetry before they form their constellations, so that you can read them in the sky. I hope that your years of scribbles on pages, reading fresh ink into the breeze off the lake, it will circle back, fresh like a water cycle, that it'll evaporate from your lips to air, to clouds, to rain. And as you silently stand in the storm, you let the words find you again.
There's so much imagery there. I'm wondering if you can, this is very much like what we do in our writing group, and I do want to try to replicate small bits of that. But around the part with the alphabet to the heart, and then there's like maybe the next 2 or 3 lines after that, my breath was just sort of like gripped from me. So do you mind reading that portion again?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope when you need the words more than anything, that the alphabet in your blood spells them out, sending them to your heart, that the stars consult poetry before they form their constellations, so that you can read them in the sky. I hope that your years of scribbles on pages, reading fresh ink into the breeze off the lake, that it circles back, fresh like a water cycle, evaporating from your lips to air, to clouds, to rain. And as you stand in the storm, you let the words find you again.
That is rich. The visuals, I love the way it flows and fits together. One of the things that we do as writers in our group is we really just affirm, and there isn't that like sort of academic piece, which is very, I think, freedom inducing and liberating for those of us, especially people that I just randomly invite to the group who don't necessarily consider themselves writers. But this last piece, I mean, all of them are just stunning, Jen. So thanks for reading them. They're just really beautiful. And I think this last piece, it just fits together like a puzzle piece, that you're taking these individual images, and that constellation line is just, because here's the thing is that this is you. Like, I can actually see you standing outside, looking up to the sky. Right. And there's that's exactly what we were talking about earlier, is that moment when your signal is back online, of looking up at the sky, and you are feeling yourself known through the beauty of what you're seeing. And that's just, there's such a connection and synergy there for you as how you live in this world and then how you create.
Yeah. Thanks for that. It's true.
So here's what we're going to do as kind of a fun, we often do a quick write. I didn't let you know that this is coming. So this is a little bit of a surprise. Okay. But like a stream of consciousness or quick write. So you're just going to like fill in the blank quickly. And these are some of the quick write type prompts that we use in our group. So I'm thinking for the listener who wants to jot some things down and answer yourself, feel free. But also I'm curious about what your lightning bolt thoughts might be as I give you a quick prompt. How does that sound?
So this is like, you're just going to verbally tell me and I'm just going to verbally respond, or am I joining my pencil?
Your first.
Oh,
ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
The most important thing about living or loving is
laughter.
My writing is
making me someone new.
A broken heart will
grow new rooms.
Hope can feel
like a lifeline.
I love all of this. Is there anything else you want to share? We're going to give people the chance to connect with you and find out where to find you in just a moment. But is there anything that you haven't been able to say yet that as you're thinking about your voice going out and people holding the space that we've just shared, is there anything that you want to leave with people we haven't touched on?
I guess what's something that when I was like thinking about this interview and I was thinking about this podcast that you're launching beautifully into the world, I think I was like so excited on a lot of different levels, but I think one of them in particular was you're just such a connector. You know, I feel when we talk about dry points in my life or when I was like just coming back online with my kids and starting to write again, and there you were, you know, and it's very like organic and like it just felt destined that we would connect just because you are such a beautiful connector of other humans. And, you know, you brought through the writing group and just connections with you, like really like amazing people. And, you know, I didn't realize kind of how lonely I was for, I think, friends who can be just like dive deep, but like in the next second, like be completely silly. Like that's like so life-giving to me to be like, we could switch gears at any moment and just, you know, follow the stream and we're all there for it, you know? And I think that's something that you are gifted at attracting and also putting out into the world. And so I guess all that to say is that there's other people feeling like that. Like I'm kind of lonely or I don't have those like connections in my life. Like they're out there, you know, it's just amazing the amount of people that if I bumped into them onto the street or like connected with them professionally, I never would have thought that they were kind of like soulmates as far as that kind of important connection, but they were. So, you know, whether it's finding online writing groups or whether it's finding just whatever brings you joy, finding those people, because it's just been like so life-changing for me to like have those humans who I just love and connect with as part of my life. So anyway, that'd be like my major encouragement for, people out there that are feeling a little lonely or like people don't understand them or they don't have that creative outlet, you know, that they should find their people.
I think that there's so many more of us feeling lonely than we realize, you know, and when I'm teaching yoga, I often will say, you know, people will cry during class. Very frequently, people cry during our writing group. And I just honor the tears and honor the expression of emotion and in a way say, you know, this is a reminder we're so much more the ocean than the island, right? And we feel like the mystery as part of our human suffering is that we feel like we're the island. We feel alone. But I love that you're just honoring the group and the call that some of our listeners may feel to like connect. And it does just take that reaching out and finding. And in this case, what I seriously see as just the dream of my life unfolding is being like a circuit board operator. I just
Yeah.
know which circuits to flick, and I'm
You do.
not a technical person, but I can see the maps of connection kind of before they happen. And I am just such a small part. I feel like I show up consistently. And if anybody's thinking about like, well, I can't find a group, I want to start a group, we'll probably have a podcast on that at some point, but it's really consistency is key. It is absolutely key. It's just calendar it out and be there, and then just show up for the mystery and the beauty. So thank you so much. Where can people find you and follow your work? Where do you want them to find you on the World Wide Web?
Oh my goodness. The interwebs. Well, Facebook.
I mean, are you still on Tumblr?
It's funny. I actually was thinking about a couple of the pieces that I wrote, and I was like literally digging through notebooks and like, remember my Justin Bieber notebook? I was like, is it in this one? And it wasn't. But then I'm like, oh wait, I think I put it on Tumblr. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to go look, and it was there. So that was great that hasn't been deleted, because I had to change my password and it didn't recognize me, all of that stuff. So currently on Facebook, Jen Brady Poet, same with Insta. So those are my two. I do have a website, jenbradypoet.com, but it's my store and some sharing, but everything's sold out right now because I'm still in the refresh mode, but you can check back. I'm hoping to have some new things kind of in the works, ready to go by Christmas. So people could check that out. But if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, if I'm going to do anything like that, I'd probably put it there. So yeah.
Beautiful.
I would love to connect with people. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen Brady Poet, and Jen Brady, my friend, my dear, dear friend. I'm so excited to bring your work and your voice and your beauty to the world. It's a great, great gift. So thank you so much.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me, Bets.
By Firelight is a Lit Path Studios production and is produced by Jamie Gale and Betsy Delzer. Music is by Legito Music and Pond 5. Thank you for being a part of our beautiful collection of stories.